Ever wonder what happened to the nutrient-packed powerhouses that medieval folks swore by? Imagine if your go-to superfoods were suddenly off-limits, kicked out of the kitchen because they didn't fit the latest health trend or modern farming playbook. Sounds like a plot twist in the saga of our diets, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to a whole bunch of medieval superfoods, those ancient gems that were once the backbone of hearty, nutrient-rich meals but now find themselves banned or totally ignored by modern diets. Back in the Middle Ages, people weren't just eating to fill their bellies, they were eating to thrive, to heal, and to power through the harsh realities of their time. Their plates were packed with foods that might seem odd or old-fashioned to us now, but these were the original superfoods, nutrient-rich, especially potent, and versatile enough to make it through long winters and scarce harvests. Think about it, medieval eaters didn't have fancy supplements or protein powders. Their secret weapons were foods straight from the earth, often wild or ancient varieties, loaded with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and sometimes even medicinal properties. But here's the kicker, many of these foods are now missing in action. Why? Because modern diets have shifted gears, often driven by taste trends, industrial agriculture, and sometimes overblown fears about toxicity or allergens. It's like we've forgotten the wisdom of ancient eaters, trading out their time-tested superfoods for the latest fad or for convenience foods that barely qualify as food at all. While the kale craze and quinoa boom have their merits, they've also overshadowed some true medieval heavy hitters that were nutrient-rich champs long before superfood was a buzzword. So, what exactly caused these medieval superfoods to get the boot? First off, changes in farming have had a massive impact. As agriculture industrialized, the focus zoomed in on high-yield crops that could feed masses efficiently. This meant many traditional grains, seeds, and plants that didn't produce as much or weren't as easy to grow en masse got sidelined. It's not just about quantity, either, it's about modern palates and dietary guidelines favoring certain foods while banning or ignoring others. Some medieval foods got lumped into the unsafe or weedy categories because they were unfamiliar or misunderstood. Then there are concerns about toxicity and allergens. Some medieval superfoods carried natural compounds that, if mishandled, could be harmful. Modern health regulations, aiming to keep people safe, understandably shied away from these plants. But in doing so, we might have tossed the baby out with the bathwater, losing out on some truly beneficial and ancient nutrition. And let's not forget the cultural shifts. As global trade expanded, new foods flooded the market, pushing out old favorites. The medieval diet was local, seasonal, and deeply tied to the land and traditions. Modern diets? They're global, often processed, and sometimes disconnected from the roots, literally, of our food sources. What's really fascinating is how these medieval superfoods weren't just food, they were part of a lifestyle. They supported not only the body but also the mind and spirit. Many had medicinal uses, were embedded in folklore, and even carried social or religious significance. Losing them means losing a piece of cultural heritage and nutritional wisdom that helped our ancestors survive and thrive. Take a minute to picture the medieval market stalls. Heaps of sturdy grains like spelt and rye, baskets of wild greens like rampion and burnet, piles of roots like skirret and scorzonera, and strange fruits like medlar. Each had its place, its purpose, and its fans. They were especially potent sources of fiber, minerals, vitamins, and antioxidants. Some even packed omega fatty acids or unique phytochemicals that modern science is just beginning to understand. But as we zoom into the modern era, these foods vanish from supermarket shelves, often replaced by more palatable or convenient options. The medieval superfoods that were once staples have become obscure, sometimes illegal, or simply forgotten. It's a dietary disappearance act that leaves us wondering, what nutritional treasures have we lost, and what might we gain by digging them back up? So, as we set off on this journey through the hidden world of medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, keep this in mind, these foods weren't just relics of the past, they were lifelines. And maybe, just maybe, they deserve a second chance at the dinner table. Ready to uncover some of these forgotten gems? let's dive in. Alright, now that we've peeked behind the curtain of medieval diets and the curious vanishing act of their superfoods, let's zoom in on some of the real MVPs of the Middle Ages, the grains and seeds that kept folks fueled and fierce. You might think grains are just grains, right? Wheat, rice, oats, simple staples. But back then, it was a whole different ballgame. Medieval eaters prized ancient grains like spelt and rye, which were nutrient-rich powerhouses packed with fiber, minerals, and a sturdy dose of character. Take spelt, for instance. This isn't your run-of-the-mill wheat cousin. Spelt has been cultivated since the Bronze Age and was a staple across Europe during medieval times. It's like the rugged, old-school athlete of grains, resilient, hardy, and packed with protein, fiber, and an impressive array of minerals like magnesium and iron. Medieval bakers loved spelt because it made bread with a nutty flavor and a chewy texture that could stand up to the rigors of daily life. But here's the twist: spelt has largely been sidelined in modern diets. Why? Because gluten intolerance and celiac disease have pushed wheat, and anything gluten-related, into the dietary doghouse, and spelt, unfortunately, carries gluten too. So, it's often lumped together with wheat and dismissed, despite being a bit easier on digestion for some and generally more nutrient-dense. Then there's rye, the dark horse of medieval grains. Rye was the breadbasket staple in Northern Europe, where harsher climates made wheat a bit of a diva. Rye is tough, drought-resistant, and rich in fiber and minerals that modern diets often lack. It gave medieval bread a distinctive tangy flavor, thanks to its natural fermentation, which also helped preserve the bread longer, a big deal when ovens weren't humming every day. Rye's dense, hearty qualities made it an especially potent grain for energy and gut health. But fast forward to today, rye has been largely replaced by softer, fluffier wheat breads and gluten-free options. It's a bit of a culinary underdog now, often overlooked by modern diets chasing easy digestibility and mass appeal. Let's not forget hemp seeds, the medieval secret weapon that's had a seriously unfair rap. Hemp was widely cultivated in the Middle Ages for its fibers, but the seeds themselves were a nutritional goldmine, especially valued for their protein content and omega fatty acids. Imagine medieval peasants and nobles alike tossing these tiny power pellets into their meals for an extra boost of energy and vitality. But here's where modern diets get tricky. Hemp seeds got caught up in the shadow of cannabis, their psychoactive cousin, and suddenly, they were stigmatized or outright banned in many places. Despite being totally non-psychoactive and nutrient-rich, hemp seeds became a forbidden fruit, nutrition-wise, because of legal restrictions and misunderstandings. It's like banning a superhero because it shares a last name with a villain. What's fascinating here is that these grains and seeds weren't just filler carbs. They were especially potent nutrition sources. They supplied long-lasting energy, essential fats, minerals, and a complex array of fibers that supported digestive health, something modern diets often skim over in favor of quick sugars or processed grains. Medieval eaters didn't just rely on taste, they knew these foods were fuel for the body's endurance and resilience. But why exactly did these grains and seeds fall out of favor in modern nutrition? Part of it is the relentless march of agriculture towards convenience and scale. Modern wheat is bred to produce huge yields and soft, fluffy flour that bakes up nicely for mass consumption. Spelt and rye, while hearty and nutrient-rich, don't always fit that mold. They're a bit more finicky, less predictable, and not as commercially viable on a huge scale. And then there's the gluten-free craze that's swept the globe. While it's essential for some, it's led to the banning or ignoring of many gluten-containing grains, including spelt and rye, even though they were ancient staples. And hemp seeds? Well, their nutritional profile is off the charts: complete protein, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in a near-perfect ratio, plus vitamins and minerals. But the legal gray area surrounding hemp cultivation means many countries have restricted or banned their use, depriving modern diets of a truly medieval superfood that was especially potent and beloved centuries ago. It's a classic case of modern fears and convenience trumping nutritional wisdom. We've traded diversity and resilience on our plates for uniformity and ease, often at the expense of health benefits these ancient grains and seeds naturally delivered. It's like choosing a fast food burger over a slow-cooked, nutrient-dense stew. Sure, it's quicker, but at what cost? What's more, these grains and seeds were more than just food, they were woven into the very fabric of medieval life. Rye bread, for example, wasn't just a meal, it was the daily staff of life for many. Spelt was often used in festive breads and special occasions, carrying a sense of tradition and celebration. Hemp seeds, besides their nutritional use, were tied to agricultural cycles and rural economies. Losing these grains and seeds from our diets means losing a connection to history and culture, not just nutrients. Imagine if we brought back a little spelt and rye into our kitchens, not just for nostalgia but for their rich flavors and health perks. Or reconsidered hemp seeds not as a taboo but as a super seed that could boost modern nutrition in unexpected ways. It's a culinary adventure waiting to happen, and the benefits could be substantial, especially for those looking for nutrient-rich, natural, and ancient alternatives to today's heavily processed foods. So, as we continue down this rabbit hole of medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, keep these ancient grains and seeds in mind. They're not just dusty relics of the past, they're nutrient-rich, especially potent foods that shaped the health and survival of entire populations. And maybe it's time we dust them off, give them a modern makeover, and invite them back to the table where they belong. Ready to meet some leafy greens and herbs that also got lost in the shuffle? Stick around, we're just getting warmed up. Alright, now that we've chewed over ancient grains and seeds, let's take a stroll through the leafy greens and herbs that medieval eaters swore by, greens that were more than just salad fillers, they were nutrient-packed, medicinal marvels that somehow got the modern diet cold shoulder. We're talking about plants like rampion and burnet, plus a certain infamous herb that might raise your eyebrows, henbane. These weren't your average garden greens, they were especially potent players in medieval kitchens and apothecaries alike. First up, rampion. It's not exactly a household name today, but back in medieval times, rampion was a leafy green superstar. Think of it as the original kale or spinach, but with a twist, a subtle, slightly sweet flavor and a crunchy texture that made it a versatile ingredient. Rampion was often used in soups, stews, and even salads, prized not only for its flavor but also for its rich vitamin content, particularly vitamin C and iron. Ancient eaters knew it as a reliable source of nourishment when other greens were scarce, especially in colder months. It was also believed to have medicinal properties, thought to aid digestion and boost vitality. But here's the kicker, rampion has largely disappeared from modern diets, mainly because it's rare, somewhat tricky to cultivate on a large scale, and just doesn't fit neatly into contemporary culinary trends. It's like the forgotten cousin at the family reunion, nutritious and charming but overshadowed by flashier relatives. Then there's burnet, another leafy green with quite the pedigree. Burnet has a fresh, cucumber-like flavor that medieval cooks loved for adding brightness to dishes. It was often used fresh in salads, sauces, or as a garnish, and sometimes cooked like spinach. Beyond its culinary use, burnet was a medicinal darling, believed to help with everything from wound healing to digestive issues. Medieval herbals sang its praises, and it was a staple in monastic gardens. Fast forward to today, and burnet is barely on anyone's radar. It's mostly overlooked because it's not widely grown commercially, it doesn't have the trendy reputation of kale or arugula, and frankly, it's just not on the menu of most modern diets. That's a shame because it's a nutrient-rich, especially potent green that deserves a comeback. Now, hold on to your hats because here comes henbane, definitely the wild card of medieval herbs. Henbane was both revered and feared. It's a plant packed with powerful alkaloids, which made it a potent medicinal herb in the Middle Ages. People used it to ease pain, induce sleep, and even as an anesthetic during surgeries. But, and this is a big but, henbane is toxic if not handled properly. Its chemical compounds can be downright dangerous, which is why modern health authorities have banned it from diets and herbal remedies. Despite its toxicity, medieval eaters valued henbane for its medicinal potency, using it with great caution. It's a perfect example of how medieval superfoods were sometimes a double-edged sword, especially potent but requiring respect and knowledge to use safely. Modern diets, with their risk-averse tendencies, simply don't have room for such risky players, so henbane got the boot. What's interesting about these greens and herbs is how they were woven into the daily lives of medieval people, not just as food but as medicine and even symbols of health and vitality. Rampion and burnet, for example, were staples in monastic gardens, where monks cultivated them for both sustenance and healing. These plants were part of a holistic approach to eating, where food and medicine were closely linked. You ate to nourish your body and to heal it at the same time. It's a far cry from modern diets that often separate nutrition and medicine into different realms. But why were these especially potent greens and herbs banned or forgotten in modern times? Partly, it's due to the shift toward large-scale agriculture and the rise of commercial farming. Plants like rampion and burnet didn't fit the bill for mass production. They're tricky to grow in large quantities, have shorter shelf lives, or simply didn't catch on with consumers who preferred more familiar greens. Rampion's rarity and burnet's subtle flavor just didn't translate well into supermarket shelves or fast food menus. Henbane's story is more about safety and regulation. Those toxic alkaloids that made it medicinally valuable also made it a hazard, especially without the careful dosing knowledge medieval healers had. Modern food safety standards and legal restrictions meant henbane was banned from diets, herbal shops, and pharmacies, cutting off a direct link to its medieval use. It's a classic clash of ancient wisdom versus modern caution, and in this case, modern caution won out. What's also fascinating is that these plants were often part of what we might call a medieval pharmacy diet. They were not just eaten for calories but were purposefully included to prevent or treat ailments. Rampion's vitamin content helped stave off scurvy, burnet's healing properties aided wounds and digestion, and henbane's anesthetic effects eased suffering. Losing these plants from our diets means losing a layer of nutritional and medicinal heritage, foods that carried meaning beyond taste and texture. Imagine if rampion and burnet made a comeback in modern kitchens, not just as curiosities but as everyday greens packed with nutrients and history. They could offer unique flavors and health benefits that conventional greens can't match. And while henbane probably isn't making a reappearance anytime soon at your dinner table, its story reminds us that medieval superfoods weren't always simple. Sometimes they were complex, requiring respect, knowledge, and a bit of caution. So, as we continue to uncover these medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, keep an eye out for the leafy greens and herbs that were once staples of health and flavor. They're nutrient-rich and especially potent, even if they don't fit neatly into today's food trends. Up next, we'll dig into some medieval fruits and roots that also mysteriously vanished from modern plates. Stick around, there's plenty more to discover. Now that we've wandered through leafy greens and medicinal herbs, it's time to dig a little deeper, literally, into some medieval fruits and roots that have quietly slipped off our modern menus. These aren't your everyday apples or carrots. We're talking about quirky, nutrient-dense veggies and fruits like medlar, skirret, and scorzonera that once delighted medieval palates but now seem to have vanished into the culinary abyss. Let's start with medlar, a fruit that sounds like something out of a fairy tale, and kind of is. Medlar fruit was a prized dessert ingredient in medieval times, but it wasn't your instant gratification kind of fruit. Nope, it required a process called bledding, which is basically letting the fruit overripen until it softens and sweetens, turning from rock-hard and inedible to a luscious, tangy treat. Think of it as nature's way of slow-cooking fruit. Medieval eaters adored medlar for its unique flavor and nutritional punch, packed with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants. But as modern diets sped up and people preferred fruits that could be eaten right off the tree or shipped long distances without fuss, medlar got the cold shoulder. Its unusual preparation and taste made it less appealing in a world chasing instant convenience. Today, medlar is mostly a curiosity for fruit enthusiasts and historical gardeners, a shadow of its former glory as a medieval superfood. Next up is skirret, a root vegetable that's as sweet and energy-rich as it sounds. Skirret was a medieval favorite, valued for its sugary taste and starchy goodness. Imagine a celery-like root with the sweetness of a carrot but packed with complex carbs that fueled medieval laborers and nobles alike. Its high energy content and unique flavor made it a reliable source of nutrition, especially when other crops were scarce. But the problem? Skirret just couldn't keep up with modern agricultural demands. It's a low-yield crop, meaning it doesn't produce enough to justify large-scale farming, and it's a bit unfamiliar to modern taste buds accustomed to potatoes and carrots. As a result, it quietly disappeared from fields and marketplaces, joining the long list of medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, not by law, but by neglect. Then there's scorzonera, sometimes called black salsify, a root with a nutty, slightly sweet flavor that made it a medieval culinary darling. Scorzonera was especially potent nutrition-wise, rich in fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and considered a tonic for the digestive system. Medieval eaters prized it for its versatility. It could be roasted, boiled, or added to stews, offering a unique flavor profile that stood out from more common roots. But here's the catch: scorzonera never quite caught on in modern commercial agriculture or cuisine, partly because it's a bit of a diva to grow and has limited shelf life. Its delicate flavor and specialized cooking needs made it less appealing in an era of mass food production and fast meals. So, scorzonera slipped quietly into obscurity, banned not by regulation but by the relentless push for convenience and uniformity in modern diets. What's striking about these fruits and roots is how much flavor, nutrition, and history they carry, qualities that modern diets often sacrifice for ease and familiarity. Medlar, skirret, and scorzonera weren't just food, they were energy sources, taste adventures, and nutritional treasures tailored to the needs of medieval life. They provided essential vitamins, fiber, and energy in a time when food scarcity was a constant threat and variety was a luxury. So why exactly did these especially potent fruits and roots get dropped from our plates? It boils down to a few things: scarcity, unfamiliarity, and the rise of industrial agriculture. Medlar's blooding process doesn't fit the modern grocery store's grab-and-go model. Skirret's low yield makes it a tough sell for farmers focused on maximizing output. And scorzonera's delicate nature clashes with the demands of shipping, storage, and fast cooking. Plus, modern palates have shifted toward sweeter, more predictable flavors, leaving these quirky medieval superfoods out in the cold. There's also the cultural angle. Fruits and roots like these were deeply tied to local traditions, seasonal eating, and knowledge passed down through generations. As global trade and industrial farming took over, these local favorites lost their foothold. The result? A homogenized food landscape that's easier to manage but less diverse and nutrient-rich. Imagine rediscovering these roots and fruits, not just as historical oddities but as vibrant, nutrient-packed additions to our diets. Medlar's complex, blend sweetness could offer a new twist on desserts or preserves. Skirret's energy-rich roots might find a place in health-conscious kitchens looking for ancient alternatives to potatoes. And scorzonera's unique flavor could inspire chefs and home cooks seeking something different and nourishing. By reintroducing these medieval fruits and roots, we could reclaim a part of our nutritional heritage that's been lost in the shuffle of modern diets. They're nutrient-rich, especially potent foods that bring more than just calories. They bring history, flavor, and a connection to the land and seasons. So, as we continue peeling back the layers of medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, keep these forgotten fruits and roots in mind. They might just surprise you with their resilience, nutrition, and downright deliciousness. Up next, we'll explore some wild and coastal plants that have also fallen off the modern menu, despite their remarkable health benefits. Stay tuned, there's still plenty to unearth. Now that we've dug into medieval fruits and roots, it's time to venture into the wild and coastal corners of the medieval pantry, places where some of the most nutrient-rich plants grew, only to be sidelined by modern diets chasing convenience and commercial viability. We're talking about plants like sea kale and good King Henry, not to mention fat hen and chickweed, which were once lifelines during tough times but are now mostly labeled as weeds or invasive nuisances. These plants were especially potent, packed with vitamins and minerals, and often played vital roles in the survival and nutrition of medieval communities. Let's start with sea kale, a coastal vegetable that sounds like it belongs in the ocean but is actually a land-loving plant that thrives near the shore. Medieval eaters adored sea kale for its tender shoots and leaves, which were rich in vitamin C, fiber, and minerals like calcium and iron, nutrients crucial for health, especially before the days of refrigeration and vitamin supplements. Sea kale's slightly salty, cabbage-like flavor made it a versatile ingredient in soups, stews, and side dishes. Plus, it was hardy, able to grow in tough coastal soils where other crops struggled, making it a reliable source of nutrition for seaside communities. But here's the twist: as modern agriculture favored fast-growing, easy-to-harvest crops, sea kale was pushed to the fringes, both literally and figuratively. It's now a rare sight in grocery stores and gardens, often overlooked despite its nutrient-rich profile. Next up is good King Henry, a wild green that was once a staple in medieval gardens and diets. Don't let the regal name fool you. This plant was the common folk's friend, packed with vitamins A and C, calcium, and iron. Good King Henry was used much like spinach, cooked or eaten fresh, and was especially valued during times when cultivated greens were scarce. It was hardy, fast-growing, and especially potent, offering a nutrient boost that helped medieval eaters power through famine and hard seasons. Fast forward to modern diets, and good King Henry is mostly forgotten, outcompeted by more familiar greens and dismissed as a weed or wild plant rather than a valuable food. It's a classic case of convenience trumping nutritional wisdom. Now, let's talk about fat hen and chickweed, two plants with humble reputations but mighty nutritional credentials. Fat hen, also known as lamb's quarters, was a vital famine food in medieval times, rich in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It was often foraged from the wild, providing a crucial safety net when crops failed or food was scarce. Chickweed, with its delicate leaves and mild flavor, was another wild green that medieval people turned to for nourishment and medicinal uses. Both plants were cherished for their nutrient density and availability, making them especially potent allies in tough times. But in the modern world, they've been rebranded as invasive weeds, unwanted intruders in gardens and farms, and thus banned from the menu by cultural bias rather than any real harm. It's ironic that foods once celebrated for sustaining communities are now the unwanted guests. So why did these nutrient-rich, especially potent wild and coastal plants fall off the modern plate? The answer is a mix of agricultural industrialization, urbanization, and changing food norms. Modern farming prefers tidy rows of predictable crops, not wild greens that pop up spontaneously or need special knowledge to harvest and prepare. Urban living further disconnects people from the wild sources of food, and supermarket culture favors convenience, uniformity, and long shelf life over nutritional diversity. Add to that the stigma of weeds and invasive species, and it's no wonder that these medieval superfoods were pushed aside. What's lost in this shift is more than just nutrients, it's a loss of connection to the natural world and seasonal eating patterns. Sea kale, good King Henry, fat hen, and chickweed were all part of a food system that valued local abundance and resilience. They thrived in marginal environments and offered reliable nutrition when nothing else would. Their especially potent nutrient profiles supported health and survival in ways modern diets rarely acknowledge. Imagine reintroducing these wild and coastal plants into our kitchens and gardens. Sea kale could become a trendy supergreen with its coastal flair and nutrient density. Good King Henry might reclaim its place alongside kale and spinach as a garden favorite. Fat hen and chickweed could shed their weed stigma and be embraced as foraged superfoods, adding variety and nutrition to modern diets. This would not only diversify what we eat but also reconnect us with ancient food traditions that respected nature's bounty, warts and all. Bringing these medieval superfoods back isn't just about nostalgia, it's about opening our eyes to the nutritional wealth that's been sidelined by modern convenience and industrial agriculture. It's a reminder that the past holds powerful lessons about resilience, sustainability, and health, lessons encoded in the plants that have nourished humanity for centuries. So, as we wrap up this exploration of medieval superfoods banned by modern diets, it's clear that our food story is far richer and more complex than what today's grocery aisles suggest. These wild and coastal plants, along with the grains, seeds, fruits, roots, and greens we've already explored, represent a treasure trove of nutrition and heritage waiting to be rediscovered. If we're willing to challenge the norms and embrace a little wildness on our plates, we might just find ourselves healthier, happier, and more connected to the earth than ever before.